the wake of what is arguably the finest example of a shocking tone shift in Psycho, directors who are not Alfred Hitchcock have experimented with the idea of changing things up a fair way into their movies with varying degrees of success. They're the movies that head in what appears to be one direction, stop suddenly and verge off into places you never expected them to go. It might be that the tone is swapped out for something on the other end of the spectrum entirely, or in some rare cases, the genre is thrown out and replaced with an entirely new one. Here's 10 movies that, for better or worse, made the decision to confuse, shock, surprise, frustrate, dumbfound, or blow us away with midpoint genre or tonal shifts. The big question still remains though. Did the decision pay off? I'm Ellie with Whatculture, here with 10 movies that made shocking genre shifts halfway through. Number 10, $1 Million Baby. The marketing people wanted you to think that $1 Million Baby was the female version of Rocky, and for the most part, those marketing people delivered on their promise. It's an underdog story starring Hilary Swank, with Clint Eastwood working his grouchy magic as her trainer. You'll see then that $1 Million Baby appears to nicely fall into the sports movie category because it's a sports movie and because I like putting things into categories. It's not quite as simple as that though. For anyone who merely wanted a movie with the simplicity of a Rocky installment, $1 Million Baby would have shattered their expectations immensely. The plot twist that occurs partway through the movie, which leaves Swank's plucky fighter as a quadriplegic, throws everything we thought we knew up in the air. It's a harrowing, numbing turn of events, one that left many moviegoers feeling miserable and confused, that transforms Baby from your regular sports yarn and into a grim drama dealing with subjects like euthanasia and mortality. Whew, where's the training montage? Number 9, Miracle Mile. Romance and the apocalypse go hand in hand, because what's the one thing that people want to do when they know the world's about to end? Well, I'm not going to spell it out for you. We're all adults here though, aren't we? We know. Miracle Mile is a little-known movie from the 80s that deserves a whole lot more attention. It opts to do things a little differently. The first 20 minutes of the movie are dedicated to conventional rom-com tropes, with a shy Anthony Edwards falling in love with a waitress as played by Mare Winningham. At this point, you'd think you know the whole story because you've seen it a zillion times before. It's a cutesy setup, though utterly deceiving in every sense. Suddenly there's a phone call, and Edwards is told that the world is going to end in 50 minutes. Goodbye rom-com, hello bleak, miserable drama about two people facing their inevitable deaths. Where's Richard Curtis when you need him? Number 8, Hancock. Hancock stars Will Smith as a down-and-out alcoholic and apathetic superhero named John Hancock, who teams up with PR guy Jason Bateman in an attempt to win back the public's affection. That concept in itself is enough to hinge a good movie on, a simple comedy with a neat premise starring two highly charismatic stars. Unfortunately, the movie throws out any notions of fun halfway through when Hancock discovers that Bateman's wife, as played by Charlize Theron, is a superhero too. They proceed to have an affair, and it doesn't work. It's mean-spirited, for starters, and with the revelation comes a dozen other unnecessarily convoluted plot points that reduce the movie to a series of exposition-driven scenes that exist purely to have you wishing the movie was back in its first half hour. Presumably, Hancock's director, Peter Berg, wanted to make a film with more substance than your average superhero flick. But this is also the man who eventually directed Battleship. I think he may have been overreaching somewhat. Number 7, Something Wild. Something Wild tells the story of a boring banker played by Jeff Daniels who gets caught up in a wild fling with a wild child played by Melanie Griffith. One look at the poster for this movie says wacky, right? I mean, Jeff Daniels is upside down. What's wackier than being upside down? And yet, after all the funny stuff, some great set pieces and a rockin' soundtrack, a poisonous drop is put into the mix. Ray Liotta. As Griffith's ex-boyfriend, he's a complete and utter psycho. And guess what? He wants her back. Liotta's sudden presence pulls the movie into new dark territory. Territory that feels completely at odds with what came before. One could certainly argue that Something Wild would have worked better as a happy-go-lucky comedy entirely, but to that I say, why don't you spend a bit of time being upside down? Number 6, From Dusk Till Dawn. From Dusk Till Dawn sounds like a movie pitched by a madman. George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino play two bank-robbing brothers who end up on a road trip in Mexico. And that's before you even factored in the fact that it randomly morphs into a fully-fledged exploitation/vampire flick at its midpoint. Why, you ask? Well, I'm not sure there's any better reasoning at work here than just why not. and that is totally fine by me. Whereas some flicks opt for unexpected tonal shifts, Dawn goes for a total genre switch-up. The movie begins with two notorious criminals taking a family hostage in their RV to evade the cops and escape into Mexico, only for, at the hour mark, the whole gang to take refuge in a terrifying biker bar, the ingeniously named Titty Twister. As it turns out, this is actually an ancient vampire temple masquerading as a burly hangout, and our heroes are launched into an all-out war. And a lot of moviegoers weren't pleased with that sudden change. Number 5. Hot Fuzz. Edgar Wright's hilarious homage to Hollywood action movies plays a coy little game. For its first half, Hot Fuzz makes a point of subverting each and every one of the tropes associated with excessive and explosive action flicks, and then spends the second half embracing them all with a giddy enthusiasm. But apparently that wasn't enough for the filmmaker and his co-writer Simon Pegg, who opted to switch genres entirely at the movie's midpoint. Hot Fuzz merges into occult horror territory, paying tribute to iconic movies like The Wicker Man. And it's safe to say that this only really half works, because the two genres, action movie and atmospheric occult horror flick, don't feel right for one another, even as the butt of a joke. Still, there is that bit where Timothy Dalton gets his face pierced by the spire of a miniature church, so it's hard to stay too mad at those who prefer Shaun of the Dead. Number 4. Life is Beautiful. If you've never seen Life is Beautiful, chances are you've at least heard of it, or glimpsed the poster at one point, which features a very happy Roberto Benigni wearing a hat. Life is Beautiful starts out as a charming, albeit conventional romantic comedy about a Jewish couple who just happen to live in a Mussolini-ruled Italy. In the same way that one might like to classify Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, though Life is Beautiful is perhaps best described as a movie in two halves. And the second half couldn't be more different from the first. The story shifts to 3 years later and the Holocaust is about to begin. The movie becomes about Benigni's character, who now has a son, making up stories to protect him from the truths of what's happening. It's a dramatic turn, and the weight of the transition is certainly felt, given the fluffy nature of the movie's first half. Number 3. The Prestige. If you're gonna change the genre of your movie suddenly, you may as well do it using David Bowie. That's presumably what Christopher Nolan thought when he came around to adapting Christopher Priest's novel for the big screen. Given that its premise is based around two magicians, it's no wonder that The Prestige emerged as something of a tricky one. What begins as a picture about two rival magicians, Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, and their constant attempts to one-up each other, the movie soon verges into unexpected territory at the arrival of real-life scientist and inventor Nikola Tesla, as played by David Bowie. And suddenly, The Prestige is a science fiction movie. Up until this point, though, there's no hint that the movie will be anything but a mystery thriller, and the arrival of the machine storyline feels slightly at odds. These feelings pass relatively quickly, though, as the movie reveals itself to have been a science fiction yarn all along. But it's not actually until halfway through that we truly understand the world of Nolan's movie in its entirety. And not everyone liked the prestigious secret sci-fi movie change-up, but they can suck it up. A magician never reveals his secrets, no matter how bizarre the secrets may be. Number 2. Sunshine. Danny Boyle's Sunshine was plagued with a relatively nightmarish production, and it shows. Filming began without a finished script, and the movie's writer has admitted that they struggled to come up with a satisfying conclusion to the story. Which is why, perhaps, that Sunshine's bizarre genre shift, which takes place a little later than halfway, so maybe you could call it a third act shift if you like, feels so forced and unnecessary. Especially since this movie starts out as a hard science fiction and later settles for being just a generic slasher movie. The movie itself concerns the crew of the Icarus II, who are on a space voyage to our dying sun in the not too distant future. Their mission? To deliver a huge bomb to the sun which will reignite it and save the Earth. Complications arise, because of course they do, when a surviving member of the ill-fated Icarus I, Pinbacker, boards our protagonist's ship and begins to wreak havoc. From intense sci-fi to stabby action, it's one hell of a switcheroo. Number 1. Audition. The first half of this movie presents itself as a goofy romantic comedy about a lonely widower who uses his high-profile job in television to audition girls as potential future wives. This is engaging and actually pretty enjoyable to watch, and pretty funny too, and had this been the whole movie, it would have worked fine. But then, it happens. Out of nowhere, at around the movie's halfway point, we're suddenly in a random apartment and a phone is ringing somewhere, and is that a burlap sack on the floor? A giant burlap sack? Is it moving? What the hell is in that sack? So it's goodbye gentle comedy and hello, well, I'm not entirely sure. Let's just say that Audition would give Hostel and Saw's love child a run for its money. Best of all though is that the shift is totally unexpected if you're lucky enough to know nothing about what's in store before you sit down to watch it. Unless of course you notice that the movie was directed by J-horror maestro Takashi Miike. Then the fluffy hijinks of Audition's tame first half probably scared you more. And that's everything for our list. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Whatculture. I hope you have a magical day and I'll see you real soon.